Hi, hello, welcome to the channel. I'm Amber, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my weekly reading roundup. Actually, this is going to be a catch-up of multiple weeks. I don't know if it's been 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I can't keep track of time very well anymore, so I apologize. But we had a thunder slash lightning storm that took our power out the week that the day that I was going to make my weekly reading, the latest weekly reading roundup I was supposed to do, and because of that, I was unable to make a video. The power stayed out until like 1 a.m. Like I kept expecting it to come back on. I went to work, thought that by the time I got home, the power would have been on because usually that's the way it happens. But apparently, what happened because there was like like explosion sounding type thing that happened. So I knew it was bad, but I was expecting that by the end of the day, that the power would have been back on. And I went home a little bit early that day because of this, because I was very worried about my parents. And the power was still not on, so we ended up having to go to the hotel, and I was so grateful that the power did go back on, like at 1 a.m. ish, because we could not afford to stay very long, but also it was all sorts of stressful. Um, and we just needed to be back in our own environment. So yeah, I enjoyed being at the hotel, I gotta say. I really enjoyed having AC. I really enjoyed just that feeling of being away, like a vacation of sorts in some ways. Things could have been a little bit better, but like, it is what it is. But yeah, yeah, because of all this, I it caused a little bit of a snafu with my reading. I didn't read for like 2 days, and for me, not reading can be a problem because it can turn into a reading slump real quick, especially right now when I'm feeling my reading to be like all over the place. Like I didn't. I thought I'd done enough so many books, and if I have enough more books than what I'm talking about, I don't remember them, which I think that just goes to show that the book was forgettable for me. But I did list some of the books, if not all of them, that I didn't need up. I'm going to talk about the DNFs last this time before I talk about what I'm currently reading, because there's one book that I want to talk about, and I might go into ramble, and I don't want that ramble to be at the start of this video. So we're going to talk about the DNFs last, but let's just get into talking about the books I did finish. And the first one is The Deep Dark by Molly Knox Ostertag, and this is a graphic novel about Magdalena Herrera, or Mags as she is more known as, who is about to graduate high school. She has been basically adultified uh, before she should have been, before she was an adult. She takes care of her grandmother. She works a part-time job to like make ends meet on as much as, like, that she can. She has a secret that lives in the basement that leaves her physically drained in the morning, every morning, and bloodied. And then a childhood friend named Nessa shows up and complicates things even more, and Meg has to kind of like decide, uh, is it worth telling her the secret? Should she tell her the secret? Why should she hold the secret back? All these things. So I I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I felt so much for Megs and for Nessa in their situation with each other, and I really appreciated how Nessa didn't let Megs get away with shit. Like, she was like, "I'm gonna run away," and she was like, "Fuck that! You're not gonna run away from me and the problem that are whatever this is." And I just they had me in there. I borrowed this from the library, and as soon as I finished reading it, I bought it. That was how much I loved it. I bought it right away. I jumped it ahead of the list of all the other books I was wanting to buy as a wait. That's how much I loved it. I also especially appreciated the fact that this author did not fall into that so familiar narrative that we need to forgive our parents kind of bullshit. Like, I literally read just last month Icebreaker, where it fell into that trap, and I was actually angry about that because he should not have had to forgive his father. He literally did not make space in his house to make his child know that he was welcome in his own home. Because at that point, he was still a teenager. Like, all that time he was still a teenager. He should have been able to, like, know that he could go there and have a room of his own. He It's so infuriating to me that we have to have this narrative constantly told to us that people who abandon you, people who abuse you, whether that's emotionally or physically, or narcissistic, whatever it may be, and it's caused harm to you, they deserve their your forgiveness just because they happen to be your parent. Excuse me? We did not choose to exist in this world. And people who are being harmed and have been harmed don't need to. You don't need to forgive somebody to move on and make a life for yourself and have a happy, full life. Like, forgiveness is a lot more for the person, and it gives them a ticket to, like, move on when if they have not even, like, shown actively that they are truly truly trying to repair the damage, I'm sorry, you don't need to forgive them for that. And I was just like, at that point when he went home for that vacation and saw that he didn't even have a space for him, I was like, at that moment, close the door. Like, close the fucking door. He clearly did not even make sure that you had a space in your own home. He fucking did you with another family. And it was like, fuck you. Him and the mother, by the way, not just the father, but it seemed heavily focused on the father in the situation in this book. So I just did not appreciate the narrative that they needed to forgive their father for abandoning them, especially when it is very clear that he did not make space in his home for his child, for his little child. Like, it is on him. It is on the father. Okay? It's on the fucking father. We did not choose to exist in this world, and just because you gave birth to us, just because you donated the seed to create us, does not mean that you have the right to expect that we're going to forgive you for every little thing that you do. Okay? Okay. Thank you. Not that I have experience with this, but I just find it really frustrating because I was here being like, he abandoned you, and he has done nothing to show or prove that he is trying to repair that damage. What? Anyways, so I was really appreciative that in the deep dark, we did not go down that road. In any shape or form. I really appreciate the way that this author handled that and the way that it was in a way that was healing for Megs, but it did not give her mother a free pass for how she handled everything. So it gets 5 stars. Obviously, I loved it, and I have already read another book, which I will be talking about a little bit later by this author. So I'm going to be reading all of her stuff, and as soon as I can get my hands on on her other work. So, that being said, the other book that I finished was Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is the first book in the Southern Reach series. It was originally a trilogy, by the way, but then he ended up in 2024 coming out with another book because he himself said that the last of the 3 books did not give enough answers. And I'm here being like, oh no, what is this going to mean for my continuation of this series? So my rating for this first book is 10 minutes. It's up in the air. It's dependent on the rest of the books, and I feel like it's very necessary because of everything. So let me just tell you what Annihilation is. Annihilation is about this Area X that nature is doing weird shit in, and the government is basically has been doing these expeditions where people will go in, try to like document, figure out what's happening, and the 11 expeditions before the 12th one that we are being introduced to, weird shit has happened to them. Like the latest, they all ended up with cancer. And so in the 12th expedition, you're introduced to the biologist who is the narrator of the story. You have the psychologist who's the de facto leader, and then you have the anthropologist and sociologist. And there was supposed to be a 5th person, but what happened? Who knows? I'm saying, we do know, but anyways. So you're basically dropped into the story with them entering Area X, and you're so unsure of like who you're supposed to trust. There's this sense of uneasiness around these 4 people who don't seem to fully trust each other either. And throughout the book, the mistrust and the misgivings of everyone just grows and grows. And you yourself are like, can you trust what the biologist is telling you? Can you trust what is being? And you're like, it's just so weird, and it's creepy and confusing, and you don't really know if you're understanding everything that is being told to you because you just don't know if you can trust it. And by the end, I do feel like you have like a bit of a understanding of some things, but it's one of those things where like you'd have to read the other books to see if it solidifies that or not. And this is why I say this book has that rating is temporary, which I gave it 4 4 stars, because even though it was interesting and intriguing, I don't know, I was still slightly confused by the end of the book, and I don't like that. I think that by the end of the book, we should have had some we should have landed on solid ground to the point to understand where we're going to go when it came to the next book. But we didn't even get there. Like, I got like 10 list answers, and I still feel like I am unsure of even that. So like, I feel like this is one of the things where you have to read the other books to see where he goes with it and find out on a whole where he's going to go. Could he have put all of this into one book? Maybe. Maybe he could have put the first 2 books into one book. Maybe. Do I care that he didn't? No. Series, you can see them as like one solid thing that got split up into like multiple books, or you can see them as separate books that have a continuation. And here it feels like it's like one solid book that got separated into different books. Um, that's how I see it with this one, and I definitely will have to be reading. I'll have to read the other books to continue. I do have the second book in the wings. I'll be reading it probably not this week, but the week after. So it will be happening. I will be continuing on, and I will see how confused I can continue to be with the series. But yeah, we'll see if by the time I read all 4 books, if I got answers and I really enjoyed it, the rating may go higher, or it might stay the same, or it might go lower, depending on if I don't feel like I got answers, or it gets confusing, whatever. But I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it for what it was. I don't know. I guess maybe I do like being confused, but I think I like puzzles. I like the idea of putting the pieces together, and I think that was what I enjoyed about it. Even though I haven't got the full pieces to be able to put everything together, I'm hoping that as I read each book, those pieces will start coming together. So, anyways, moving on. The other book that I finished was Remarkably Bright Creatures. And this one, I'm sorry, I don't have the book with me because all the books I've been reading are from the library. So I don't have the books. The one book that I do have, I didn't want to get off my shelf right now. But, so I don't remember the author's name at the top of my head. But I think a lot of us know what this book is. So like, if you are part of the community, you pay attention to the books that people are talking about, you'll have heard this book before. But anyways, this is about Tova, whose husband, when her husband died, ended up going back to work, and she ended up becoming a janitor at the Foul Bay Aquarium. I think she's like in her early 60s, by the way. So like, you know, she should be retired kind of thing. But she ends up working there. And then you also are introduced to Marcellus, who is a great Pacific octopus who loves to escape his take. And one night she ends up rescuing him when he strayed too far and got himself tangled up in cords. And they create this unlikely friendship. And there's like also this whole unanswered thing when her son was 18 years old. He had gone missing, and everybody assumed that he had committed suicide because of like, the whole boat situation that happened that they found out about. But she doesn't really believe that he did. And Marcellus is like, I'm going to give her the answers that she wants. And I'm here being like, you're an octopus. How could you? Okay. So there's a lot of things that you kind of have to like, the realistic aspects that they had to kind of like shrug off. Like, you know, you know, treat this as a semi-fantastical aspect of it, because like a lot of things I don't think make sense. Like even if octopuses are smart and intelligent, but are they that smart and intelligent? You know what I mean? Like, but I really appreciate his sarcastic tone. I really liked Tova's perspective, especially. I really appreciate the discussion around grief and how she was handling that, and the way that people kind of reacted around her when it comes to the way that she was handling it. But I did not like Cameron. So we're introduced to this person named Cameron. His mother, when he was a child, abandoned him. She was a drug user. She had an illness. We do find out like what was the cause to her becoming addicted to drugs, but there's like She didn't, it's, it's frustrating because this would be spoilers, but like the thing that he always uses her as a scapegoat for why he is the way he is. Like, he gets fired from so many jobs, and he's like, "It's not my fault that I have a shitty life." I'm like, here being like, "Excuse me, you're a full ass adult. You were like what, 8, 9 years old when she abandoned you, and I'm sorry." She had the presence of mind to make sure that you were that to make sure that she brought you to her sister to make sure that you were safe. And yes, you have every right to feel angry and deal with that. You know, you have that trauma, and I get that. But you're adult now, and I feel like the way that he acts and the way that he talks is throwing the love and care that his aunt gave to him back in her face. Oh, I had a shitty life. How shitty was your life that you had an aunt who cared and loved you and made sure that you had a roof, food in your stomach, and did the best that she could to make sure that you had a good life? And she's giving you opportunities job wise, and you threw that back in her face by getting fired from those jobs that she made, that she used her favorite of to give you those opportunities. What the fuck is your issue, dude? There is no excuse, and I get so fed up that he would constantly use his mother as an excuse for this when your mother is not here. She is not here causing these issues. I would understand if she was there hindering him in some way with her drug abuse, whatever, like that. I would get it that it would be hard to like deal with in combination of trying to like keep your job if she was getting in the way of that in some way. Like, I would understand that, but she's not even there. She's not in your life to cause havoc, and you are using her as a scapegoat for your own choices. You are a full ass adult, okay? And you're taking advantage of your friends, your aunt's goodwill, and you're throwing back her kindness in her face. And I'm here being like, you are irresponsible. You don't give a shit about the actions and the choices that you're making when it comes to the impact that it has on your family and friends. And I just think that you're a selfish douchebag. I can't stand him. I could not stand him. I understood, like, at some point what his purpose was in the story. It did not take away how infuriating he was, and I also did not really appreciate the fact that he did a 360 like right at the end of the book. I'm here being like, no one who is this irresponsible, who could not even at towards the end of the book could understand like why somebody would not want to give him this specific job that would have had him have control over a store. He could not understand like why. There's no growth. There was no growth. It was just a snap of the finger. All of a sudden, light bulb. Oh no, I need to be an adult. And I'm here being like, okay, he should have gone to therapy. He should have dealt with his trauma. If through the book we saw him at like the halfway point, like realize that what he was doing was wrong and it was irresponsible and it was going to like it's biting him in the butt, and it was going to like create a future for him where he would end up houseless, fully friendless, without anybody. And he's like, I need to like, somebody brought up like, maybe you should seek therapy, talk to somebody, whatever. And he went and started doing that, and we saw that. Then I would be like, okay. And then we saw actual character growth. We saw him actually trying to deal with his trauma and going through the process of realizing that you cannot be blaming someone who's not there actively causing you harm for choices that you are making. And taking and seeing him actually through that process take responsibility for his actions and actually show him taking the job that he actually got seriously enough. Like, yes, he got that job, but I don't see him taking anything seriously. And it was 360, man. I'm here to be like, this is unrealistic, and I don't care. I don't like him, and it kind of tainted the book for me. So it got 3 stars because of that. I could not with him. I also found it really strange that Tova saw this octopus out of his tank, super far away from his tank, even especially, and did not think to notify someone in charge. They're like, hey, your octopus is like escaped and almost died from the tank because of it. So that's irresponsible too. I'm like, why would you do that? Where's the logic of that? There's a lot of things that weren't very logical when it came around with the octopus statement. Like, I could turn a blind eye that he was escaping from the tank because it's possible that maybe that was a possibility that could happen. But the fact that she herself, who is supposed to be a responsible adult and act like is responsible, would not even think to notify somebody. You know, it would have been like one thing if she had like notified and then like he found a way to keep on escaping, and then she was like, okay, like if you're gonna escape, I'm gonna make sure that you do it responsibly. Like that would be like one thing, but like she just did not give a shit. She did not care if he died. Like clearly you didn't care because you saw what happened and you didn't think about how that is a risk for future possibilities. But okay. Anyway, so like I said, that gets 3 stars. Then I read Squire. So we're now into September, and I read Squire at the start, and this is by not Nadia Shamas, and this is about um, this is about this girl who, oh, Isa, sorry, Isa, who has a dream of being a knight, but because of a lot of things, there's like this whole thing with the I don't know how to pronounce it though. By Saji, and she's Ornu, and they've been like oppressed and scapegoated by them, and the only and now there's like a famine that is emerging, and they're on the brink of war, and so she takes advantage of this to go and enter this squire school. And so you're seeing her navigate that whole complicated world of um, trying to hide that she's Ornu, navigating friendships, rivalries, all these things. And we see her dealing with um, things that it's almost like she fell for the propaganda, even though she experiences the hate that people have for her and her people, and yet on some level she fell for the propaganda that they spread. And so she ends up being helped by this person named Ornick, I think, and I really appreciate their relationship because he was a knight himself at one point, and yes, oh no, it's actually Doruk. Um, and he was a knight and now he's a janitor, and he like helps to like break down in kind of like he almost like in a way destroys this image that she had of the military of these people who are in charge, and she has to deal with what that propaganda did to her, and also like what that means for her to like realize these truths. And I just love Iva. I love the way that she handled the truths that were handed to her, and how she what she decided to do with that. I also found it very interesting, like the way that the other characters handled the realization of these truths. There was like certain character, like the characters that is interesting, but also not surprising that the people who are not rich and privileged were the ones that were more easily able to see the truth, whereas the persons that were fully a part of like the higher class and was so propagandized their whole entire life into it that it the truth almost in a way broke them, and maybe not even in a good way. I would be very interested to see another book by this author that deals with that one of these characters. Um, because of that, I would like to see like would this author think that they would she think that they would how does she even get there? I don't know. Would this person become the villain, or would they go the other way and become a revolutionary? Like I'm very intrigued in what the author would do, and but maybe we're supposed to be the ones to think about that ourselves, um, because this book is standalone. I don't think I've seen anything other to say that there is going to be a continuation. This book came out in 2022, so if there was going to be a continuation of the story in any shape or form, I think that we would have already gotten that maybe. So, like I said, this one gets 5 stars. I really liked it. This is another book I'll be buying at some point. Then I read Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. Um, and this one is about a magical detective who lives in Chicago, and she is an exiled Auspex who sold her soul to save her brother's life. And because this is a universal thing, if you watch Supernatural, you may know this, but when you sell your soul, you only have like 10 years. So her 10 years is almost up, and she's given one last job before she's to serve an eternity in hell. And when she ends up turning it down, her client sweetens the pot by offering up the one payment that she can't resist, which is a chance to have a future, to grow old with the woman that she loves. I overall enjoyed this book. It was interesting for the most part, but I did have issues with the mystery itself because she had 3 days to track down the white safe vampire. Now, I don't know if the author was purposely not trying to be subtle about things, or if she just didn't handle it well. All I will say is that for me, the mystery was pretty obvious when certain characters were introduced, and I don't know, when certain things um came out, and etc. Like, I knew where it was going, and so when the big reveal, the end events happened, I was not surprised at all. I it's like, I don't know. So like, this book for me gets like 3 stars because I did enjoy it. I appreciated the relationship between um Elena and oh no, sorry, Elena, Helen and Edith. And I think there was one thing that I did not see coming. Like, although as soon as that they like left in the way they left, I knew something. But like, obviously, when you're starting the book, you're not gonna like think anything. And so like the things that she was talking about, I was like, okay. When the certain thing was revealed, I was like, okay. And then you saw that like the piece of shit. I'll be like, I just was like, you're supposed to be this smart person, but I saw this and you didn't. Like, come on, you live in this world. You should understand certain things more than I would understand. And yet I knew what that meant way before you did. So like, there's the things that are obvious, and I found it frustrating that the character herself did not seem to see. So I don't know. I also found the brother frustrating because of something that he does when she saves him, and I'm hearing here like, did he really need to experience what she went through in order to have sympathy and empathy? Because he loves his sister, so how would he not be able to understand why she did what she did? And like, you could disagree, but to go that far to do what he did, I'm like, you're still an asshole. At the end, you're still the fucking asshole that you were at the beginning of the book. I could not, I could not with that part, but I did appreciate that it was dealt with on some level, even though I don't know if I really like the way that it was handled fully. It was just like one of the things. And also, lastly, I will say, like, if you've watched Castle and Bones, you'll know those episodes that there are like multiple episodes in at least one of the shows where they would have like these back in time episodes where they narrated, and it was like over the top and it was annoying as hell, at least for me. It has that those elements in this book. They're like, it's not often enough for me to have like shut the book down because I do find that annoying, but it was there, and in the moments that they were there, I was like, oh, that's just too much. Like, did we have to? Like, did we have to do that? Like, come on, please. Like, let's not. But yeah, this is like one of those things where for me, I just did not. Oh, I don't like that. But well, that's just a me thing. Like, I give it 3 stars still. Actually, I think I gave it like a 3.5 star, but I think it's more like a 3 star thinking about it now. But either way, I didn't. I do enjoy it, but I would not buy this book, but I would definitely like read other books by this author and see if other works of theirs would work for me better than this one. Um, the next one that I read is The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag. This is the same author that wrote The Deep Dark. And this one, you're introduced to, I forget her name off the top of my head. Let me look it up. Hold on. Um, Anyway, so it's about Morgan, yes. So she's 15 years old. She is desperate to leave her island. Like she is determined to just get through high school. So, like she has this idea that if she leaves the island, she can be her true self. She has a secret that she wants to kiss a girl, and she has not come out to anyone, family or her friends, and she's just desperate. Her parents divorced, and her little brother is volatile and is causing a lot of tension within the family because of that. And then one night she ends up slipping into the water and she almost drowns, but she gets rescued by this girl named Kelty, and they end up becoming friends. And so we're seeing these two girls fall in love, and also like finding like realizing that certain secrets cannot stay hidden, especially if you actually do care about your friends. Apparently, I will say that this, okay, trigger warning that this does deal with divorce, so if that's something that is something I would go in that with that knowledge that it does deal with that. It also deals with a forced coming out situation. Somebody who knows what that is like, would like know like if this was handled well in the book or not more than me, like but I it is dealt with. The person does apologize, and there is closure with that. We also understand that it came from a place of like something that was not him purposely wanting to out her in that way. So I thankfully, it wasn't like, thankfully he did not do that in a situation where it wasn't just them, kind of. If you read it, you know what I mean. So like I appreciated that part in a way, in a way that was handled in that way, because like, ugh. But either way, I didn't like it, but obviously it was meant to be talked. It was meant to be there for them now to talk about. I give this book 4 stars. It's sweet. I enjoyed the romance. I enjoyed what it was trying to say through the book. I enjoyed the artwork, but it did not hit in the same way that The Deep Dark did. It did get me like emotional at the end. It did make me tear up, but yeah, it just did not hit me. And I think maybe it's because this book is more for the younger ages rather than The Deep Dark, which is more for the older ages. And you got that aspect. But I give it 4 stars, and I would and will end up buying this book because I just love this author's works, and I'm going to be continuing on with her other stuff when as soon as I'm able to have free space to do that, because I have so many books out of the library right now that I need to work on. I'm trying very hard not to request any more books because I really want to like get back to reading my own books that are off my shelf, because I have so many books that I need to like get to. But yeah, so then the last book that I finished is Enter a Ghost by Isabella Hamad, and this one here is about an actress named Sonia who has just gotten out of a very disastrous love affair, and she has decided to go back to Haifa to visit her sister Hanin, and she ends up getting roped into playing Gertrude when she's there, and you're seeing how this play is struggling to try to get on their feet because of the threats and blocks and roadblocks that the Israelis are trying to put in front of them as they're working their way towards the opening date. But yeah, what I appreciate about this work is how it's discussing this divide, this disconnect that Sonia had with Palestine, with what was happening in her homeland, in Haifa, all these things. She I think she was actually born in London. They moved to Haifa when she was children. They lived for a good chunk of their life in there, and then when her parents divorced, they ended up going back to London. And then when they became adults, Hanin chose to go back to Haifa, and Sonia stayed back in London. And so there's this disconnect that she has with what is going on in her homeland. She's like, she doesn't have that personal stake in, because she's not there. And the way that when she was there, the way that she kind of like put boundaries, put up walls between what was happening and in her head to like protect herself from what was going on, kind of like distorted certain things that were happening around her. So a lot of the book, you're seeing her trying to deal with these memories and the frustration and the anger that she feels towards Hanin in a way because of certain things that she never told her, the things that she withholds from her. And it's interesting because I feel like the author withholds from us in the way that I don't really feel like we ever fully understand how Sonia feels, where she stands on things. What are you going through? Like, what is it? I never really feel like, even at the end when things are dealt with in some ways, like we see the sisters really grapple with the differences at the end, towards the end. I don't feel like even then that I had a good handle on Sonia. And there's just this restraint in the way that this author wrote this book that came off as withholding, came off in a way that it felt like she was talking around Sonia's emotions, what she was thinking, what she was feeling, the process that she was going through. It just felt very much like, you know, like Sonia was standing back, standing over her own story and telling it like she was, you get what I'm saying. I found that a little bit frustrating, especially because the things that get dealt with have it like towards the end of the book, and I feel like we should have had this being played out throughout. I wanted to feel Sonia's emotions. I wanted to be able to be gripped by what she was dealing with. I understood that she was disconnected, and I maybe that it's like I get that. I felt like yes, it makes sense that for a good chunk of this book that we ourselves are going to feel disconnected because she's feeling disconnected, and I thought that by at least the halfway point we would start feeling more connected to her emotionally because she would start being able to understand her own emotions and be able to bloom outwards and show that, express that outwardly. And there's like moments, but even in those moments I was just like the way that it was written kind of like pushed me away from it in a way. So I don't know. I really appreciated this book for what it was doing, talking about that. I found it very interesting that Hanin was working for and with Israelis when it comes to like she worked at the university that was run by Israelis. So she herself had to deal with that also. But I don't know. There's just like certain things that somebody would say that kind of like rubbed me the wrong way in a way. I'm like, really, you're just so cold and indifferent and unfeeling almost. And I don't know how to feel about that. So I think it's an important read. I see myself buying this book at some point and rereading it because I think that a reread it would actually benefit me. But yeah, it was like one of those books. I did not give it a rating because I don't know how to feel about it. I think it's an important read. I think that we should be reading and uplifting Palestinian authors and their works. And it's important to keep in what they're going through. And maybe I'm just wondering like how much of what the author herself was going through at that moment emotionally was playing a part in why she chose to keep that distance within the book and the narrative like, I don't know. But anyway, it was an interesting way of telling the story. But yeah, those are all the books that I finished. Now to the books I DNF'd. I'm gonna talk about there's like two books that one was a temporary and then one was attempted. I'm gonna talk about the attempted one last because I have things to say. I'm gonna do that ramble at the end. But I'll talk about the ones that I DNF'd, fully DNF'd, and the first one is Tender is the Flesh, which I DNF'd in September this month. So Tender is the Flesh is a horror novel wherein all animal meat, there was an infection or a virus that contaminate all animal meat to the point that it is poisonous. I'm like curious because I don't really understand the logic of this because at some point the virus is going to die and that you continue to spread it somehow? Like, how is it contaminating all meat to the point that what happened to the animals? Like, we don't get answers to that. Like, how is it, like, are there no animals? Like, what happened? Like, did they just all die out? Did I miss that? Maybe I missed that explanation. I don't know. Either way, um, and because of this, the government ends up okaying cannibalism. So you're introduced to Marcos, who works at this factory that like they use the skin for like leather work. And you're introduced to like his life. He is separated from his wife. They lost a child. I don't know if it was like a miscarriage or no, I don't think it was a miscarriage. I think it was actual like an actual like the like the like they died as an infant. And maybe I don't really remember. I feel like some things were never like fully clear about like how, but maybe if I had actually finished the book, I would have known that for sure. But either way, so you're seeing like how he's indifferent to certain things, although you have an idea, at least at the beginning of the book, that he does not really like what he's doing. And so I have an idea that when he is given a woman as a gift, and they call her a head, I think, that would actually have opened his eyes and challenged him on like his own indifference, and that's what I was expecting. But instead, no, he just gets worse and worse. Okay, so first off, before I really talk about this book, I just trigger warnings for SA/R, and this is going to be spoilery. And I do want people to, if you watch this part, to comment to me, like if you've read this book and you have a differing opinion about this aspect. I want you to tell me because I'm so confused about how to feel. Like I've seen people like go back and forth on this, and I don't like it personally. I saw someone review and talk about this part, and I know about this because I read like the last section of the book to know this. So just I want to know. But so trigger warnings. Please protect your own mental health and headspace because it's important, and I don't want you to cause harm. I don't want to be caused. I don't want to cause harm anyway for you. But let's move on. I'm going to be talking about spoilers in one, two, three. So in this book, Marcos seems indifferent, as I said before, and yet doesn't seem to really like it. And then he gets a gift from one of the owners, and it's a woman. And I was expecting this, as I said, for him to be challenged. Now, also, there's like things that she brings up and then we never hear about again. Like she brings up the fact that when everything was first starting to go down, the first victims were immigrants and houseless. And then she also brings up the fact that his boss wants him to get black skin, and it gets completely dropped. The focus gets turned to this woman, and I don't really understand the point. I don't understand why it had to go into this whole situation where he ends up, again, trigger warnings, he ends up grooming her, SA/R in her, and then killing her at the end. Don't get why that had to be there. It was very clear from the start that this author was criticizing the overconsumption of meat and how that impacts the meat industry in the way that they would would and do treat animals in the process of creating meat. And that in itself was enough. Okay? Be like, you know how animals treat? Imagine if it was you. Like, it's very obvious and very clear what she was trying to say, and it growth and horrifying, but also not really surprising considering that if you know anything about how enslaved folks were treated, you would know that some of these things are not far fetched as you would like to think. So it's not like surprising, but it's also it also did make me like sick to have to like read that on the page. But it's not surprising in a way because like it's not that far fetched when you know anything of what happened to enslaved folks, um, and the things that they were doing. with their bones and their skin and their teeth. Like, do you not know that George Washington used enslaved folks' teeth as dentures? Ugh. Anyways, so I really don't know how to feel about that. There's a lot of like back and forth when it comes to that. I don't really feel. It feels a lot like she was using it as like shock value. Like I don't like that. It feels almost like you're trivializing what women and people go through all the time. They're regularly. Like for what? What are you trying to say? That he's an asshole? We already knew that. Like you could have made him be an asshole without using that. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was just all sorts of stuff. Like I didn't understand. I couldn't get past it. And I think the messaging of like the other things were just a little too obvious and woo 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 like like you knew what she was trying to say without having to make any effort. So I DNF'd that. Now the other book that I DNF'd was The Delicate Dream Department Store by Mai Lee. And this one I ended up DNFing because I was just bored. Okay, I think that with this one, it's a cozy fantasy, and so in this world, you're introduced to a mysterious town where in everybody's subconscious there is a store that you can go to and get and buy dreams, and you're introduced to Penny, who is excited and desperate to get this job, and you see her like first her starting her job, establishing herself in the job, and the customers and coworkers that she gets to know and become friends with, etc. Um, and what I'll say is that I felt like I was slightly misled by the synopsis and the author because they make it out like this is supposed to be like one cohesive narrative, and for like the first 100 to maybe half of the book, it is she's establishing herself in this job and all this stuff, and you're seeing kind of getting established in like how the store is run, all this stuff. And then as soon as that happens, it just becomes mini stories of these customers that come there, and the only thing that ties them is obviously Dora and Penny because she is there meeting these customers. So I don't like short stories, and I kind of turned it into like a short story collection at that point. And I also just wasn't really enjoying Penny herself. I just kind of found her frustrating because she was like, she claims that she's so desperate for this job, but then she was last second cramming to try to like get an understanding of the boss of the store. And I'm being here like, shouldn't this have been something that you did, you know, weeks, days ago? Get that all established. Like, and there was like no reason given to like why she was doing it like so last second either. And I feel like we're supposed to find her like her irresponsibleness almost endearing, the way that the first day that she starts her job, she's almost late. She's has a crumpled shirt. She goes to these like introductions to all the floor managers, and she doesn't seem to care. Like, are we supposed to find this endearing? Because I don't find it endearing. And maybe this was um being maybe I was being infected by Cameron because I was reading this at the same time I was reading um Remarkably Bright Creatures. So that could have played a part in like why I found her so frustrating. Like maybe I wouldn't have been so frustrated with her if I hadn't been reading that book. But I just found it so frustrating how she doesn't seem to really care and doesn't want to work. Like, girl, same. But at the same time, you claim to be so desperate and excited for this job, and yet you don't want to seem to want to work anywhere. Like, it felt like I was getting mixed signals here. Like, oh, she's so desperate to work. Oh, I'm gonna take this front-facing job because nobody else wants it. Yet you act like you also don't really want to work at the same time. I'm so confused. I could not understand her fully, and I just didn't really like how like you're so excited about the job, but your first day's impression is a rumple shirt and being almost basically late. Like, I don't know. And again, I just found myself bored. I don't have anything like these were just personal issues for me. I think that if you enjoy comfort fantasy, if you enjoy books where there's no real solid plot, low stakes type books, you're going to enjoy this. I will say that I have read Legend of Latte, which is the only other comfort fantasy that I've read, and I enjoyed that. It wasn't the best thing that I've ever read, but I did enjoy that one. And I think a lot of that had to do with it. It had, at least it had some plot. It had a cohesive story, even if like there it was no high stakes or anything. There is one solid story, and this one did not. And I felt like I was being misled, so that possibly part of it. So like, if you enjoy short stories, if you enjoy cozy fantasy, this is a book for you. I think that there are people that are going to enjoy this. There were no major issues really in this book. It just wasn't for me personally. Now on to the two books that are like not contentious. Only one of them is contentious for me. So the first one is my temporary DNF, and that is Dr. No by Percival Everett. This is the author that wrote James, and I loved James. I really enjoyed James. I need to buy that book. I've been trying to wait for a cheaper copy of it, for it to get into paperback. So, you know, it will be bought at some point. But if you're expecting his writing and like certain things to be like similarly to James, dispel that because the way that he wrote Dr. No is not in the same line, I think. He loves math, he loves philosophy, he loves science, and you see that in this book. So in Dr. No, you're introduced to Walla Katu, I think is the name. And these two, the first and last names are from different languages, but they both um, translate to nothing. Like nothing, nothing. So his name would be nothing, nothing. And he's an expert on, you can guess it, nothing. And he gets hired by this up and coming villain who wants to break into Fort Knox to steal um, nothing. And he wants to take control of the small town in Michigan and turn it into nothing. And so you're seeing how Walla ends up teaming up with this other woman, this other person who to subvert everything that he tries to do while still be in his ire. um, and I liked, well, I like the idea of this book, but I read like 17 pages of this and I was like, I cannot continue on. I feel like his intelligence is way high above me, and I was struggling to like understand like, is it supposed to be metaphorical? Is it a metaphorical nothing, or is it like a nothing with a capital N? Like it actually is something, like nothing, something. It's there's like this whole section, this whole paragraph where he talks about some things from that, and when I tried to read it, I couldn't understand it. But I was also trying to read this book the day before and the day of the thunderstorm, and I think that was playing a huge factor in why I could not grasp it, because when I tried to read it several days after we had gone home, I read that section again to someone else, and I was like, oh, I understand it. Could I explain to you what it was trying to say? No. It felt very tongue twistery in a way because of that, and I think that at a different time, maybe I would be able to give it a better effort. Will I DNF it still? I probably would DNF it still, because there are aspects to this book that I was not enjoying. I ended up skimming through a whole section because it felt like I was reading a textbook, a school textbook in a way, and I just don't know. Not the kind of writing that I enjoy. I don't know. Very much something that's probably not going to be for me, you know. So, anyways, it's one of the things. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I really wanted to like read all of the backlist, but if this is something that he tends to do a lot, it's probably not. He's probably not an overall author for me, because I feel dumb. I felt dumb when I was trying to read this, because I'm like, I don't understand what he's trying to say here. But I'm going to try it again to see if it was just where I was in my headspace, because I feel like that was a huge factor in why I was not getting what he was putting down. But the other and last book that I will be talking about that I tried to read was Pride and Protest. And this is by Nikki Payne. And if you cannot tell, this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling. We're introduced to Lizzie, who is a DJ. She believes that she's about to lose her job. She's also dealing with a lot of anger over the fact that this corporation is dropping unaffordable condos on every corner of DC. And when her family is invited to a corporate event, she decides that she's going to use that opportunity to protest. And it blows up in her face when she ends up mistaking the CEO for the wait staff. And the CEO is Dorsey, who is a young Filipino man who was adopted into a white, wealthy family. And he sees Lizzie as a performative activist, all words and no actions. And there's like this whole misunderstanding because apparently, according to reviews, he really is actually trying to stop it. But I'm here being like, you're still kind of part of the problem, by the way. Like, you're the CEO. Don't you have some kind of power? Like, what? What? I don't know. Either way, it's too hot for you, be. Either way, what was interesting about this is that when I first, like, the month before, at the beginning of the month, I had seen this at the library and I read the synopsis and I put the book down. And I should have trusted my instinct on that because I was like, not now. And I knew that, I just knew. But then I saw it again randomly at the end of the month and I was like, okay, maybe I should try this. And I should not have tried it. I don't know what it was about that first chapter. Well, okay, I kind of know what it was about that first chapter, but I felt so anxious after reading that chapter that I when we tried to read the next chapter, I could not continue on. Um, so hold on. Excuse me. Uh, so the first chapter, you're introduced to this family, and it is so on the nose when it comes to the names. Like you know exactly which original character each of the characters are supposed to be. And I also didn't really like how I got this vibe that none of these characters really liked each other. I was like, Janae and Lizzie, who are supposed to be Jane and Elizabeth, they're supposed to be the closest, and I even felt like there was something going on between the two. And I'm like, these two are like supposed to be best buddies. Like, Elizabeth and Jane are close. They're very close. They trusted each other with everything, and like she tells you that they're like that, but I did not get that vibe from them at all in that first chapter. And I also did not like the fact that there was like this possible homophobic thing that happened where the mother like speaks about something and she says it in a way that is like, oh, that's not appropriate language. But then when Lizzie challenges her on that, like tells her like, oh, that's not right, she brushes it off and acts so flippant about it. And I'm just like, okay, that seems like she does not care to make sure that she is using the right language when it comes to how she talks about the LGBTQ plus community. And I'm just here being like, oh, that's just not it. It really bothered me there because I'm like, why did we even need to put that in? Is Lizzie herself queer in some way? Is the author? Are we going to challenge this in some way? Is it going to play a part in like the story overall? I don't know. Either way, I just did not like that. Or are you just using that as a way to make her unlikable? Which you could have just made her unlikable in the way that the original character was unlikable. You know what I mean? Like, why do we need to do that? Like, kind of thing. I just don't feel like it was necessary. And especially when I found out certain thing, I was like, why? I was like, oh, that just makes it worse in my opinion. But you just say that. After that chapter, I decided to go look at reviews because I was like, this is weird. I've never had like a chapter where I read one chapter and I felt so ick about the book. And so I read reviews because I was hoping that somebody would actually encourage me to want to read the book still further on. And instead, it solidified my decision to DNF it because this author references HP heavily. Multiple reviews have said this, and I'm here being like, why the fuck would you feel the need to do that? This book was published in 2022, so there is no excuse. I do not know excuse when it was very solidly clear at that point who JKR is. And I get so frustrated and disgusted with how many people will literally bend over backwards to make excuses for why they still have the books, why they still watch, why they still read, all these things. And I'm here being like, this author is alive and actively causing harm to this marginalized community. And by you continuing to platform and promote her works, you are actively creating avenues of money towards her, and she uses that money to put into bills and organizations that are actively going out of their way to cause harm to the trans community. So you are playing an active part in that by doing so. And I do not have respect for that choice. I do not have respect for this author for making that choice to actively choose to promote and platform this author's works in her books. And it's very interesting because at the time that I had picked this book up, I also had gotten into like a whole thing with somebody because that there was a post where someone was asking like, if you watched or like follow people on like YouTube, TikTok, whatever, and you saw a book on their shelf would be a red flag about that person. And I saw some comments saying like, "Oh, this is so toxic. Like this book is not meant to be like this." And I'm here being like, it's really not toxic to think critically about the people that we are choosing to follow and also who we choose to read and buy books from. Like if you're not willing to think critically about that, that makes it a problem. I'm sorry, it does because you cannot put those books in the background of your shelves and not expect people to see those books and think that that on some level is a promotion of that author's works. You cannot talk about those books on your channel and not think that 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 is you promoting that author's beliefs. And JKR herself has said that by you continue to read and buy and watch her stuff, that you are agreeing with her stance. She herself has said and understands that you cannot separate the art from the artist. Like, it is so frustrating how so many people will bend over backwards to continue on supporting this author, knowing full well what your support signifies and says about you. Um, like you can choose to read the books. Do you need to buy the books in order to do so? Do you need to be talking and promoting and like loving on these books in public spaces? I don't think so. I also find it very hilarious that that same person came back at me and said, I was censoring and gatekeeping. I'm sorry. How can I gatekeep somebody from continuing to read the books? Can I reach through the screen and lock the door so you can't leave the house to buy the book? Can I take off your Wi-Fi so you cannot buy the books off of your Kindle? What? Can I go through and take those books off your shelves and like throw them away? No, you the fuck you want to do. But we get to choose who we support. I am not going to support people who continue to support these authors. That if so many people who continue to bend over backwards to support these authors, which have stopped supporting those authors, stopped buying those books, they would have been able to. We wouldn't even have to hear from them again because they would not have that power, that platform to continue speaking their spew and their hate. Like, JKR literally came out with a Hitler quote this fucking last week. And she has been a Holocaust denier for a while. And it's been very well known. That's the person that you're supporting. You're supporting a Nazi. You're supporting a racist, anti-Semitic transphobe. That's who you're supporting when you continue to buy and watch and continue to talk about her stuff continuously on social media. That's who you're continuing to support. And that's the person that you are saying that you're giving with and that you're choosing to, align yourself with. You do not, I don't understand how people who can't grasp that idea that if you're continuing to keep those books on your shelf and very obviously promote them by having them on your shelves in that way, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's the same with SJM. I'm sorry, but SJM is a Zionist. She also used a black woman's death to promote her books. Yeah, I see so many people have multiple copies even of those books. I'm sorry, they are trashy books. Like, it's fine to read trashy books, but she puts her Zionist bullshit in her books. She also has made it very clear that she's a Zionist. So she's okay with the genocide that's happening currently in Gaza and Palestine. So that's who you're supporting. And it's hilarious because you cannot say that you're against a genocide, but then continuously support a literal Zionist. You know what I mean? So it's crazy. It's crazy word. It's wild. It's wild to me that you want to get upset with me for saying that I would not support and I could not trust somebody's reviews or their stance on anything when they are actively supporting authors that are actively causing harm to communities. Okay. Anyways, that's my little rant about it. I will not understand. And also, people who want to be like, there's gray areas. I'm like, I'm sorry. There is no gray area when people's lives are literally being put at risk. People are literally starving. People, homes are being blown up. There is no gray area. There's no gray area when trans people's lives are being put at risk because of the things that JKR is doing and saying. And that is the things that you're supporting. And there's no gray area about that. And I can't support people who would continue to platform and promote those authors' works. Knowing full well. If you know full well what those authors are supporting, and you continue to support them, there's no gray area into that. I'm sorry, but you know, which means that you're okay aligning yourself with that. Okay? Anyway, moving on. Those are all the things that I read, DNF'd, and now let's talk about what I'm going to be starting today, the books for the week. So the first one is Daughter of Fortune by Isabel Allende. I'm continuing on with my next read of Isabel Allende, and this one is about Eliza Summers, who was orphaned at birth and was raised in the British colony of Valparaiso, Chile, by the well-intentioned Victorian spinster Miss Rose and her more rigid brother Jeremy. She ends up meeting and falling in love with the wildly inappropriate Joaquin Andieta, a lowly clerk who works for Jeremy. And just as this happens, gold is discovered in the hill of Northern California. So by 1849, Chileans of every stripe have fallen prey to fever streams of wealth. Joaquin takes off for San Francisco to seek his fortune. Eliza, pregnant with a child, decides to follow him. So she ends up going to San Francisco, and she's trying to navigate this whole new world. And she ends up meeting the Chinese doctor Tao Cheyenne, and he helps her like navigate things, and they become friends. And so she's gonna have to look around and decide what her future is. Is she still determined to try to find this man who just basically abandoned her? Like, I don't know the background. Like, did he know that she was pregnant? Did he just choose to abandon her? Did he even offer to like take her with him? Like, did he even really love her? Like, I don't know. We shall see what happens. I enjoy Isabel Allende's writing. I really enjoyed the previous book that I read from her, so I'm continuing on with this one. Then I also reading Against the Loveless World by Susan Abu Awa. And this one is about Nar, who apparently is existing in an Israeli solitary confinement cell. And so she's telling her life story. So, as a young woman, she dreamed of marriage and modern appliances, but found herself a jilted bride struggling with displacement, refugeehood, abandonment, and sexual exploitation. A foul-mouthed critic and passionate dancer, Nar finally returns to Palestine, where she's transformed by the power of her roots, literature, and love. There, she emerges a radical political thinker who risks everything to reunite her family with their native land. So apparently she is telling this. So I think my assumption is that at the start of this book, we will know that she is imprisoned and she's reflecting back on her life. Very much excited for that. And I'm also picking up Cobalt Red: How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives by Siddhartha Kara. Now I have seen critical reviews against this book because he's British. And so there's like this whole aspect of like we should be trying to find books that center Congolese people and not in like the Western lens. Also, I saw someone talk about how it's like a lot of it is him like being like upset over his like being upset, so he's kind of like he turns this book about him in a way. So I'm gonna see. I do have a list of other books that I will be going through that actually like that goes more into this, because this was like the first book that I saw that actually dealt with this, and I've seen so many people like recommend it, so I picked it up because of that. But I want to like also get better understanding, so I'm gonna be reading other books from about this topic around the genocide that is going on in Congo at the moment. Let's not forget them either. So I need to like this is not going to be like the end of that journey of reading books that deal with this. But this is just going to be the start, and we're going to see my opinion. I definitely think that it already makes me like hesitant because if you're going to put your own emotions into it, and it's not about your experiences around it, it's supposed to be about like you know uh the so like it says that like it's the first ever expose of the immense toll taken on the people and environment of the Democratic Republic of the Congo by cobalt mining, the crucial mineral that powers our lives. So, I mean, it does say here that Kari recounts his journey into militia-controlled mining areas, praises the supply chain of child mined cobalt. So I think in that way that obviously there is going to be an element of his own personal experiences playing that. So, like, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, these are the books that I am going to be reading and everything that I have to talk about today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.